Laos needs more funding and equipment to remove unexploded ordnance or UXO from land so that agriculture and development can expand. Our news team granted an exclusive interview with Canadian Shark State Affairs and Head of Office in the Lao PDR, Bob Paquin, learning that Canada recognizes the serious obstacles that unexploded ordnance poses to the country's development.
For years, we've been supporting various UXO clearance work, but this one is quite groundbreaking, quite literally, because through this project, we're going to actually help Lao government be able to tackle the scourge of landmines, something that's never been done before on a formal basis. So this project's been underway now for a little while. Canada's been supporting the UNDP office here.
The press conference to mark the 13th anniversary of the entry into force of the Convention on Cluster Munitions, or CCM, highlighted in the remarks were attended by Budumpon Sontani, Deputy Minister of Labor and Social Welfare, and Mrs. Martine Therer, resident representative of the UNDP in Lao PDR. The significant progress achieved over the past 13 years and the remaining challenges for the country to fulfill its obligations under the CCM and enable the people of Lao PDR to live free from fear and the threat of unexploded ordnance or UXO. Canadian Shark State Affairs Bob Paquin was pleased to participate in commemorating the 13th anniversary of the Convention on Cluster Munitions. Canada recognizes the serious obstacles that unexploded ordnance poses to the country's development and offers condolences to the families of the children killed and injured by UXO recently.
They're talking not just to the leadership.
According to him, since 2013, Canada has contributed 2.7 million Canadian dollars to reduce the harmful effects of UXO in support of Laos National SDG 18. Lives safe from UXO.
Canada's been supporting the UNDP office here, working with the National Regulatory Authority to build this capacity. And shortly we're going to be joined by the government of Germany in supporting another aspect of this project, working with Handicapped International, now known as Humanity and Inclusion. So together, the two bodies, again working with the Lao government, will build capacity to be able to go and tackle landmines.
Canadian Shark State Affairs Bob said Canada has been supporting the UNDP office here, working with the National Regulatory.
Landmines, unfortunately, have been as well, not nearly as well known as the UXO problem of the cluster munitions, but do hinder development, do still kill people, do injure people every year, and hold back development. So we're very, very happy to be able to work in this narrow but very, very important field.
Born out of a collective determination to address the humanitarian consequences and unacceptable harm to civilians caused by cluster munitions. The convention, which bans the use, production, transfer, and stockpiling of cluster munitions, entered into force on 1st August 2010 and became legally binding for state parties. As the most heavily bombed country in the world per capita, the Lao PDR was one of the first signatories to the CCM and an early champion. We asked the Canadian Shark State Affairs and Head of Office in the Lao PDR his perspective. Why is it must ban cluster bombs, given situation in Laos?
We've been working with the Lao government over many years in terms of trying to tackle the cluster munitions challenge. That we completely understand the need for continued work in this area, and again, as the keepers of the Ottawa Landmine Convention, we know only how seriously this affects Laos and the rest of the world, and we fully support stopping the use of cluster munitions anywhere in the world.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs on July 10 issued a statement expressing its profound concern over the announcement by the United States on the supply and possible use of cluster munitions. As the world's largest victim of cluster munitions and a state party to the Convention on Cluster Munitions, the Lao People's Democratic Republic expresses its profound concern over the announcement and the possible use of cluster munitions. Mrs. Martine Therer, resident representative of the UNDP in the Lao PDR, noted when co-hosted a press conference to mark the 13th anniversary of the entry into force of the Convention on Cluster Munitions, or CCM, It is indeed heartbreaking that 13 years after the entry into force of the convention, and although the 123 countries have committed to its goals, cluster munitions continue to be used in conflicts around the world, and called for renewed joint efforts to clear as much confirmed hazardous land as possible before the 2030 SDG deadline. As La Pena continues to implement its obligations under the CCM, the UNDP UXO program will provide technical and programmatic support to the NRA and the Lao National Unexploded Ordnance Program, or UXO Lao, thanks to the generous contributions and in partnership with the governments of the Republic of Korea, New Zealand, Luxembourg, Ireland, and Canada.